All right, hello everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is Left Bank Books welcomes New York Times bestselling author and former St. Louisan, Curtis Sittenfeld, who will celebrate the paperback release of her new book, Rodham, which I only have the hardcover. This is mine, so I have the hardcover to show you. Tonight, Curtis will be in conversation with me, the events coordinator for Left Bank Books, Shane Mullen. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore. We offer curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. We are now open to customers coming into the store, so you can find this incredible book on our front table and on several displays throughout the store. We are very happy to be able to bring our event series virtual. We believe that events are a way to expand your mind and bring in new thoughts to make the world a better place. We hope that you enjoy this event, and we hope that you support Left Bank Books by purchasing a signed copy for you or for your friends at left-bank.com. Purchasing a signed copy of the book from Left Bank Books allows us to keep our bookstore and staff operating, and it allows us to keep this event series going, and it keeps me employed. Thank you so much for your support. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis. We will be taking questions from you, the audience, at the end of the event, and also kind of throughout. So if you have a question, I'll throw it in there whenever you type it in. So you can type in your questions as a comment on YouTube or Facebook. Be sure to follow us on YouTube or Facebook or both to find out about all of our fantastic virtual events. Our June is packed with events for readers of all ages. And on that note, happy Pride, everyone. About tonight's book, Rodham. New York Times bestseller. From the author of American Wife and Eligible, he proposed, she said no, and it changed her life forever. Oh, the Oprah Magazine says, a deliciously clever what if. Good Morning America says, immersive, escapist. And the New York Times says Ingenious. It was named one of the best books of the year by The New Yorker, NPR, The Washington Post, Marie Claire, Cosmopolitan, the UK, Town and Country, and The New York Post. And now the premise, because if you haven't already read this book, you should, definitely. So in 1971, Hillary Rodham is a young woman full of promise. Life magazine has covered her Wellesley commencement speech. She's attending Yale Law School, and she's on the forefront of student activism and the women's rights movement. And then she meets Bill Clinton, a handsome, charismatic Southerner and fellow law student. Bill is already planning his political career. In each other, the two find a profound intellectual, emotional, and physical connection that neither has previously experienced. In the real world, Hillary followed Bill back to Arkansas, and he proposed several times. Although she said no more than once, as we all know, she eventually accepted and became Hillary Clinton. But in Curtis Sittenfeld's powerfully imagined tour de force of fiction, Hillary takes a different road. Feeling doubt about the prospective marriage, she endures their devastating breakup and leaves Arkansas. Over the next 4 decades, she blazes her own trail, one that unfolds in public as well as in private, that involves crossing paths again and again with Bill Clinton, that raises questions about the trade-offs all of us must make in building a life. It is a happy hour event. I have only barely just started picking those, so I just can't read. Brilliantly weaving in a riveting fictional tale into actual historical events, Curtis Sittenfeld delivers an uncannily astute and witty story for our times, in exploring the loneliness, moral ambivalence, and iron determination that characterize the quest for political power, as well as both exhilaration and painful compromises demanded of female ambition in a world run mostly by men. Rodham is a singular and unforgettable novel. And Kate Atkinson, the author of Big Sky, says, startlingly good. Sittenfeld is one of my favorite writers. And now, about Curtis Sittenfeld. Curtis is the New York Times bestselling author of the novels Prep, Man of My Dreams, American Wife, Sisterland, and Eligible, and the story collection You Think It, I'll Say It, which have been translated into 30 languages. Her short stories have appeared in The New Yorker, The Washington Post Magazine, Esquire, and the Best American Short Stories, of which she was the 2020 guest editor. Her nonfiction has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, Time, and Vanity Fair, and on public radio's This American Life. And now, if you all would please help me in warmly welcoming, loud round of applause, Curtis Sittenfeld. Hello.
Hi, Shane. Thank you. That was lovely. It's so nice to see your face. And thank you for that introduction.
Yeah. Let's start with, what are you drinking?
I know this is so embarrassing. So I pulled out, I don't know. I feel like the light is reflecting off the. God, I'm so bad at this. So after you and I and my lovely Random House publicist Jordan were talking beforehand, at which point, after I had pulled out my can of beer, you revealed to me, I've known you actually for quite a while now, and you revealed to me that you had been a professional bartender for many years. I would have tried to impress you more if you had told me that yesterday, but I'm having a beer. But what are you having, Shane?
So I actually came up with the name for the drink that I've been drinking for a while now. As I was pouring it, I was like, I know exactly what this is going to be called. This is the Paris Texas Mule. So it is cucumber vodka, the Western Sun from Texas, combined with Saint Germain elderflower liqueur, so the Paris part, and ginger beer. And it is delightful and fresh and just kind of perfect for this sweltering day.
Yeah, very summery. It's so funny. I can totally picture that on a menu at a delicious restaurant. Congratulations.
I was going to have a really cold martini and decided that it probably would get very hot within the first couple of sips, and I needed something that would last me the full hour, because a martini is really just 3 big shots or 1. Yeah.
Depending on the bartender.
Yeah. Depending on the size of your martini glass.
Well, I know that it's super hot in St. Louis today. It's medium hot in Minneapolis, but I do know that it's super hot in St. Louis.
Yeah, I did put on pants for this, so
I'm so flattered. We're both being so fancy tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the book, because I have loved so many of your books, and I have not gotten to talk to you at all since I read this book. So I have so many questions, and so many, hopefully, questions that you haven't heard 1,000 times, because this is the paperback release. So we might have.
You know how you said this is what the paperback looks like, which, God, I'm incredibly bad at showing things on camera. The paperback looks a lot like the hardcover, except the paperback has more words on it.
Yep. Showing off all of the amazing attention that your book has gotten, because I'm certain that they could have just been like, oh, we can put some of the blurbs on the back. And then they were like, we have so many. What do we do with all these blurbs? And they were like, well, we got to put them on the front. So.
Well, it's funny because I will say, I don't think any book is universally sort of, praised or gets universally positive reviews. But one of the joys of a paperback is you can self-select, so you can kind of pretend. And so if ever I'm introduced, as I was tonight, or if I look at the cover of the paperback, it's so good for my self-esteem, because it's this total filter of any negative feedback. But I will say, I don't live in a bubble, so I'm aware of the positive feedback and the negative feedback.
That leads to my first question, which is, do you know if any of the Clintons have read it?
So, as far as I know, none of them have. I have not heard from any Clinton, not Hillary, not Bill, not Chelsea, or could keep going.
Roger.
No. Yeah, and I don't. It's funny because some people will say to me how could she not read it? Wouldn't it be sort of irresistibly tempting? But I do think that she is so extraordinarily famous and has been kind of scrutinized and in the public eye and criticized for so long that I would think she must have learned to ignore sort of forms of attention that maybe don't feel like they serve a purpose, or And I mean, I think in some ways the book is a love letter, like it's kind of a complicated love letter to Hillary Clinton, but it's not. It was not written with the goal of being pleasure reading for Hillary Clinton. It was written to be like pleasure reading for you, but like not for. So I actually don't think like if somebody said like, oh, Shane Curtis wrote a book and the main character is based on you, I suspect you would read it, like or vice versa. If someone said Shane wrote a book about you, Curtis, but I think that she's had sort of life experiences that are different from the ones that we've had.
So someone actually, my college roommate, actually wrote me as a character in a play that then was being produced at my university, and I inadvertently got cast as the character of myself that she wrote, inspired by me, and had no idea. Like, I would have never said, like, oh yeah, this has some startling similarities.
How'd you find out?
Closing night.
That's actually, it's kind of like generous or healthy that she didn't mention it before then.
Yeah. Oh, I probably would have freaked out. Like, oh, it probably would have been, it definitely would have affected my performance.
And what was the character's name?
Oh,
Blaine?
no.
Dane?
It was Shay. No, I can't remember what the character's name was, but yeah.
That's fascinating.
I think I would want to read something based on me, and especially given the last year, like Hillary had to have like needed to fill time during the pandemic, and I don't see her as a puzzle person. So
she has a new podcast. There's no plausible deniability with this book, which is like, it's like if I called the novel Shane and your face was on the cover. So it's like I can see, again, I definitely admire her. But I even felt like I felt like I could have written a book that was designed with like the goal of her emailing me, or like maybe I would meet her in some way. And I think that would not have been a good novel. Like my loyalty had to lie with like almost like the novel and the plotting of the novel and the like structure and character development, all the sort of technical things, and not with like the person of Hillary Clinton. And in some ways, at times, I even feel like that like what I did is almost has things in common with like a Saturday Night Live skit with like Amy Poehler playing Hillary Clinton or Kate McKinnon playing Hillary Clinton, and that it's this. I mean, it's not even really supposed to be her, or like the reader is not supposed to think that I'm giving real insights, or it's almost like insights that might be insightful as far as they're like false or like distort or twist reality, but you're not supposed to read this and think it's a biography. Does that make sense?
Oh, I would hope that. I mean, the people would have to think it was the most poorly researched biography of like, well, I mean, the basic concept of like, she didn't get married. Like, how? What? Like,
you'd be surprised. I actually have heard back from a few people who I don't think they finish it thinking it's a biography, but I think they did start it thinking it was, and then they had some unexpected disappointment.
So speaking of character and character development, that's kind of what I want to talk about a lot, because I do really love the character that you created. And I'm wondering if during the writing process you were ever able to to forget and like honestly not think about the fact that you were writing someone who really exists and just think, this is a character that I've created.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because sometimes I'll hear myself, if I'm talking about the book, like referring to like my Hillary or fictional Hillary, who is distinct from real Hillary, or just Hillary. And I think because I was working on the book, for a few years, there came a point where I would sort of, I don't know, like in some ways, every novel for me is like every novel I write is like a fever dream, and so it's almost like I start writing and I can slip into that voice, and it's like the further along I am, the less self-conscious a writing experience it is. So I do, I think there's like probably different days when I feel more or less aware of like the project in a kind of meta way. And there are times when I just feel like, like almost like like she's in this scene, or like I'm in this scene, or I've put on my Hillary suit or something, either my pantsuit or my like costume, and then I'm like thinking as her, and I'm sort of like I need to do this thing and this thing, and especially writing in first person sort of for me can be a useful way of closing the distance between me and the character. Whereas when I write in the third person, I do feel more like I'm observing the character.
I feel like I should maybe give a spoiler alert for this next one. So I have only ever met, of all the Clintons, Hillary has been to the store. I have apparently peed in the same toilet that Hillary has peed in. You might have too, Curtis. You never know. Depending on which restroom you've used at the bookstore. So I've never met Hillary, but I have met Chelsea, who does not exist in your book. And I'm wondering, like, did you ever think about like maybe incorporating her in some way that wasn't just necessarily the union of Bill and Hillary, but as like maybe Bill with someone else or Hillary with someone else, and having Chelsea still exist in the world? But I kind of felt sad that it was like, well, the only person I've met is Chelsea, and she just doesn't exist.
Although both Chelsea and Hillary have written many books of their own. So I feel like if you want to have that sort of, reading experience with Chelsea, you sort of can. I mean, so it's interesting because I think this is not too much of a spoiler, but my version of Hillary, so she says no to Bill, like as in real life, he proposes twice. She says no. He proposes a third time. In real life, she said yes. In the book, she says no. And then she kind of goes her own way. And, I felt like, it would be, I think that in real life, if you said to me, what's your sort of sincere factual opinion of what Hillary would have done if she hadn't married Bill Clinton, I think she would have married someone else. And I think she probably would have had children. But in some ways, I think that I really wanted the novel to be in conversation with reality. And so there were certain ways I wanted it to be pretty similar to reality. Like I have her make a version of her famous, I could have stayed home and baked cookies comment. And then in other ways, I wanted it to be different or to provide contrast. And I wanted her to ultimately not get married and not have children. In part, I mean, it was an opportunity to sort of think about, like, I think there are several high profile, very successful women who either weren't married or were married relatively briefly, didn't have children, whether it's like Oprah Winfrey or Sonia Sotomayor or Condoleezza Rice or Elena Kagan, whatever. And I think it's interesting to think about, it's hard to quantify how not being married or not having children, how that directly affects their success, their professional success. But I would certainly think it has to. And so that was interesting to me. The other thing, I mean, weirdly, there are people who sometimes basically say to me, I did a version of this book with, like, imagine a fictional version of Laura Bush's life. And there are people who basically say to me almost like, how can you live with yourself? Or like, that's so intrusive, essentially. And I kind of feel like, I don't exactly think that Laura Bush knowingly signed on to be a first lady. Like, she didn't sort of know how it would unfold. I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks Hillary probably had more of a glimmer that she might be first lady than Laura Bush did, just in terms of, like, I think people were always predicting that Bill Clinton would be president. But there is something about the children of famous people, like, really, really didn't choose it. The spouse kind of didn't choose it. The child definitely didn't choose it. So I think I also have some sort of I mean, like again, I think there's some people who probably think, my God, like you don't have a restrained bone in your body. But actually, I think the child thing is partly me exercising restraint. Surprise.
I like that. I didn't think about it that way. I didn't think about like, I just thought, well, I'm sad that she
I
doesn't
mean,
exist.
again, it's not like I don't like. I have to say, if Chelsea existed in this book, I don't think that would feel like a gift to Chelsea if she if she read. Like I don't. I think this is probably not a book that Chelsea would ever curl up with.
Oh, I hope not. I mean, knowing her, I also don't think that this would be the kind of book that she would. I mean, we can talk about the sex, like, because I mean, that's probably the main reason why I don't think she would want to read this book, because I would not want to read a book about either of my parents having sex. So, like, right there, that would just be like, okay, I'll read a book about myself, and you can fictionalize whatever sex you want to write about me if you choose to write a book about me. But if that involved my parents having sex, I would just be like, no, thank you.
I think you're not alone. And it's funny because I actually do think, I get all sorts of feedback for the sex scenes. And I think that there are some people who feel that reading about like a president and a first lady having sex is actually uncomfortably close to reading about their their parents having sex. It's like reading about the country's parents having sex. I mean, I felt like I didn't put the sex scenes in lightly, in part because having written American Wife, which came out in 2008, I got feedback for those sex scenes. And I knew that I was basically subjecting myself or like opening myself up to being mocked, that it's sort of to make fun of someone's sex scenes is very low hanging fruit. But I thought like if I don't include them, it'll be for reasons external to the book. And I think including them makes the book stronger. It makes the story stronger. It makes the characterization stronger. Like, I think when I watch a romantic comedy, like a movie, I love when I feel invested in this couple's chemistry or attraction. And then they like, face these obstacles and I feel distraught on their behalf. And I hate when if there's a couple where I'm supposed to be rooting for them and I don't care. And I think that you have to to make a reader care about a couple's romance, you have to show it in a very detailed way. And you have to show it, with dialogue and with sex. And it's like these two people in their early 20s who are, fall in love and kind of plan their life together, and she particularly like uproots her plans. So it felt important, and it also felt like in real life, if two people sort of meet and are interested in each other, they know if they've like kissed or not kissed, or they know if they've said I love you or not said I love you. And so it just felt like it's true to human nature to show the sex that way. So.
Yeah. And I mean, you did not write erotica. You wrote very honest, very real sex scenes that felt like they were necessary to the progression of the character. So, really, what?
It's funny. I don't know. I'm not even sure what erotica, like what defines erotica. Like I mean, it might be, maybe it's like it's supposed to be sort of like maybe the primary goal is to be like erotic, I suppose, as opposed to it's incidentally erotic. But I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting thing to ponder.
Yeah. And I think erotica, the primary, like definitely the primary focus should be like the sex, and like things lead up to sex. Like they don't lead up to like something else. Like the progression of the characters, when will they have sex next? Like
it's not like this the sex is leading to the whatever. Like okay, that's a fair point.
Which was easier for you, and which I want to know the pros and cons between writing a book about fictionalized Laura and writing a book about fictionalized Hillary, and which you found to be easier, more self-satisfying? Like, which did you? Because I mean, Laura Bush they're both kind of polarizing figures, but like I think we have very positive and negative feelings about the two, and I'm wondering, writing a book about each, which one did you personally like end up falling in love with more?
Well, I mean, I think I'm a little bit in love with both of them. You know, to put those probably aren't the terms I would I would use without like if I weren't kind of mimicking what you're saying. But I certainly respect both of them. I mean, I'm a Democrat, so it was almost like I admired Laura Bush in spite of myself, whereas Hillary's kind of values and goals are more aligned with mine. I mean, I know a lot of people. I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting moment because I think that politics are shifting so rapidly in this country that things feel really different from 2016, from 2008, when she was running. But anyway, I mean, I think you know, I don't think it was. I think that like a lot of people, a lot of readers saw Laura Bush as kind of a blank slate. And I think that people could see what they wanted. So like a lot of, I think, Republicans would say like, oh, she's so gracious and respectable and decorous and whatever. And then I think a lot of Democrats would say almost like, oh, she's like a Stepford wife and she's kind of blank faced and and I don't those both seem like really shallow characterizations to me. And then meanwhile, I mean, the way that people talk about Hillary is bananas, and like I think so much of the time has nothing to do with the individual person of Hillary and has to do with the person's feelings about women, gender, ambition, politics, Democrats. And again, I think that people often sincerely think their feelings are about Hillary, but like, something I've often thought is uh, that like if you were to say to someone who really dislikes Hillary, like what are the sort of facts that make you dislike Hillary, or like almost like could you give me like a 5-minute summary of her biography and like the policy that she's most worked to advance. I think there are some people who are super well informed, but I don't think it's the majority. I think the majority of people are like they just get a really unpleasant feeling about how corrupt she is or how dishonest she is, and it's like this projection or this symbol, and of course really no person is a symbol. Every person is a person.
If your publisher brought a giant suitcase with like $5 million in it and said, will you do this for Melania? What would you say?
Oh my God. It's so funny because people have said, would you ever write about Melania? And I say, absolutely not. But nobody has ever said, would you do it for $5 million? I mean, part of me, honestly, I almost feel like if I were offered that much, it would be almost immoral not to. And like what I should do, is say, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna like donate the entire amount to whatever progressive causes, Act Blue or something like, or like to like close races and in
Whoever's running against McConnell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the close like Senate and congressional races. So like maybe under, but I would think I would have to be allowed, like the terms of the contract would have to be like I publicly like get to reveal that. I mean, this sort of gets back to your earlier question that I would not want to write a book about someone. I mean, sometimes it's kind of fun to write about a person who's like nasty, but it's like nasty in the way, or like, grumpy. Like it's somebody who like thinks uncharitable thoughts about other people, or, like has a fight with, with like their sister or something like that. It's not, I mean, like to me, a person can have negative qualities and still be endearing. But like I don't like or respect Melania at all. And I don't find her interesting also. So it doesn't I just feel like well, and the other thing is that of course the question of like would you want to write a novel from Melania's perspective, the question is sort of like, would you want to imagine what it's like to be married to Donald Trump? Like, would you want to
Ooh,
spend years doing that?
yeah, you would
And
have to spend years like
yeah,
in her shoes.
yeah. I mean, it's and like, what does in a weird way? I mean, I wouldn't want to. I was going to say it would almost be easier to write it from his perspective, but I think that's not true. I think there would be, but so I felt when Trump was president, I felt like, um, you know, he takes up so much space in my brain and already without my wanting him to. And I would not voluntarily give him more. Like it's such a gift to be able to choose the topics that I write about, and I don't choose that. That's a very long answer.
I mean, you spoke about how like the first wives didn't really choose.
Mhm.
And I think that Laura like eventually did come around to at least accepting her responsibility and role. Melania never did. Like so she like didn't want to be first lady from the very get-go. Like last day she was still just like I don't like this is not who I am. I'm not first lady. Like so I think it would be like breaking your own rules of like it needs to be like you're taking a character that has accepted their role in where like what you're writing about.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a New Yorker piece about Melania that I think was written by Lauren Collins like quite a while, maybe 4 years or more ago, and I mean, she does it is an interesting thing to think of her like as an immigrant, and she marries this very rich man, and what does she like think she's entering into, and what does she really enter into, and did she ever foresee what happened? But again, I just like that whole world, the world of the Trump family, you know, like so I'm like a very avid reader of People magazine, and early on it felt like People kind of covered like Ivanka and Jared almost the way you'd cover other, and it just felt to me like so off and so wrong, and it feels like they are not like other political family. Like there's just something, I don't know, or like what I recognize as sort of universal human qualities just don't feel like they kind of come into play with that family.
Yeah. I do want to remind the audience that if at any point in time you have a question that you would like to ask to Curtis, you can type them up in the Q&A or in the comments, and we will throw those into the conversation. I know that you have to, as a writer, have a character arc, and you like have to build in conflict and things that make the story interesting to readers, and you did. But I'm wondering, because like we want Hillary to be happy, is there one thing that if you were like, I'm writing a completely different kind of book, this is strictly like just the happiest things to happen, what would you change? Like, what one thing in your fictional Hillary would you change to give her more happiness in her life?
That's an interesting question. I mean, okay, so I certainly personally am not someone who thinks, I don't think like you need to get married or you need to have children to have a happy life. I think that if you think you need to get married or have children to have a happy life, then like that might be true for an individual person. And so I think that like one section that was kind of fun is that she sort of finds love later in life on her terms. And actually, I feel like a disproportionate number of readers have told me they get a kick out of that. And I think maybe I would have like introduced that character, in her 30s instead of like in her 60s or something. Like so maybe there would have been. But she has the opportunity. It's funny because um like there's a passage where she talks about having had like dated a lot and, you know, in her 30s in this fictional universe, and then kind of like choosing, like taking a little break from that, all that after she turns 40. But a lot of readers seem to kind of breeze by that passage and almost see her as, instead of in that time being kind of like single by choice, like see her as being, I don't know. So I think that maybe this person that she ends up finding this kind of easy compatibility with, I would introduce them earlier.
Okay, I really like that answer. What else did I have? I took a lot of notes, but oh yeah, okay, here we go. When you were writing, did you ever think this is maybe going too far, and then you just went ahead and did it?
That's such a funny question because I feel like, again, I feel like I've probably been asked versions of that, but it's like the $5 million in the suitcase. It's like I have not been asked quite so precisely, so like damningly. I mean, okay, so this is what I'll say. Like, as I'm writing, I really try to let the writing process be detached from the eventual publication. And I'm very lucky that I tend to be under contract when I'm writing a novel. So like I know that it's very likely it will be published. And there's not, I mean, it could be that the publisher, like my editor, comes back to me and says this just isn't working, but the overwhelming likelihood is that, you know, the book will certainly be edited, but it will be published. And so I think that, you know, like as I'm writing any scene, whether it's a sex scene or any other kind of scene, it really feels experimental. Like it feels like I'm trying this and I'm going to see how it turns out. And if it turns out like, and it feels unacceptable or too extreme or whatever, I won't include it, but I won't know how it kind of seems or feels or reads on the page unless I actually write it. Like I can't evaluate how an idea will be executed or how successfully it'll be executed.
All right, we have a question from the audience, and I'm trying to figure out who the she's are in this. So
I think I can see it too. I think
it's you. So
no, I think
oh.
I think it's Hillary. Why do you think she did take the path she took with Clinton and stuck it out? So
Okay.
Hillary, and do you think she felt she could make a difference with that platform?
Thank you.
So, I don't know, Shane, have you seen the Hulu documentary about Hillary by chance?
I have not.
It's really, I think it's really interesting. It's possible that I'm a little bit biased, but so there's somebody who is interviewed who went to law school with both of them, who says, like these are two people who really love each other, and it would have been so much easier if they didn't. Like it's not a political arrangement or an agreement or something like that. I think they like each other. I think they like talking to each other. I think they respect each other's intelligence. I think they probably are attracted to each other. I mean, not everyone would make the choice to take that belief and, you know, whatever, like, flesh it out in various scenes. But like I think that, and I feel like to feel really electrified by another person, I think that would be hard to walk away from. Like at one point, I read actually the first 250 pages of Bill Clinton's 1,000-page memoir, My Life. I stopped reading it when they got married because at that point, I mean, it was well, okay. To my surprise, I basically kind of felt like I was like falling in love with Bill Clinton as I read it, but I thought to myself, if it were 1975 and I were Hillary and Bill Clinton wanted me to move to Arkansas and marry him, I would do it. Like it's hard to find people that you're really crazy about, who are crazy about you. And I mean, yeah, it's like I mean, he's complicated, but and I've also, like, so I've never met Hillary, I've never met Bill. I've heard them speak, you know, where I've been in some gigantic, you know, whatever, like it's like I'm like a football field away from them. But many people also say that he is just like, you sort of melt when you're around him. And even people who like plan not to like him, that he has this just incredible force field of charm, basically, that's very hard to resist.
Before we get to the next audience question, so you were not the first person to kind of create fictionalized characters based on like presidents and like first ladies and all. One of my favorites, and I have met Joe Biden. So have you read or do you know about the Joe Biden mysteries?
I know about them. I haven't. Are there? I don't think I knew there was even more than one,
There are
actually.
two, and they are really well done. Like they're
I've
actually,
heard that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's like it's sort of.
Andrew Schaffer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it is so funny. I know. Well, it's one of those things where something that's so interesting is people's reaction to writing a novel about a real person is really interesting. Where some people I think feel like, oh my God, this shouldn't be legal, or like this is so just
Real and living.
real and well, okay, so that's but if you start taking apart that belief, it's fascinating to like say like where are the boundaries of what should or shouldn't be done, because that distinction is very important. People seem to have no problem if a person's dead, you know, have at it, like have a free for all, no matter who it is. So that's like that's okay. And then it's also like, you know, is it better or worse to write a novel about a living person, or to have like a movie or TV show like it, like The Crown, which is a TV show that I think is outstanding. You know, is it like, is there some phenomenon where it's an actor playing the person, and so then we're more comfortable with it because there's this like acknowledged distinction, or if you use real names, which I did do with Rodham for the most part, but I didn't do with American Wife. Like, does that also, you know, make it more or less transgressive? Like, it's a really kind of, I don't know, it's just a very weird thing. And then also there's like the tone question. So it's like if Amy Poehler or Kate McKinnon plays Hillary on SNL, or you know, whoever plays Nancy Pelosi, or like if Kate McKinnon plays Rudy Giuliani, if it's satirical, is that like somehow more acceptable? You know, like it's just it's very strange, or but like strangely interesting. You know what we are and aren't comfortable with, which of course also varies individual to individual. So it's so like what you're describing, I should read those books. I mean, I should, you know, now, like in part because you said they're good, but just also because they're kind of doing a variation of what I do.
Yeah, I mean it is a very fictionalized version of Biden and Obama, but they have very solidly like things that are accurate historically. So I think Andrew actually did a like, I mean, wildly different. Like, I mean, very much like more on the comedic end of, whereas yours like actually like, I don't want to say puts more thought into, because I mean he very clearly like put more thought, like put a lot of thought into.
Is realistic, maybe more realistic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yours is more speculative. His are more like kind of from this point, like where, well, no, yeah, yours does the same, because like, except his stops being real like post presidency or post vice presidency, yours stops being real at the third proposal. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of comparisons. If I were a doctoral student, I would write my paper on this.
Well, there's still time. You're so young, Shane.
Oh, thank you.
Still time.
My birthday is a month from tomorrow, and I will be turning older.
I think you're ageless. I think the entire time I've known you, you've seemed, you know, mature yet youthful.
Oh, thank you. We've known each other for a long time. Yeah,
No, I
I
know.
love it.
It would be hard to say exactly when we. I know. What year did you start working at Left Bank?
It's been 10 years. So I
Oh, we've
started
known each other
10
10 years.
years ago this July. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this is a big month for you.
I know.
This coming July. It's
Yeah.
momentous. Yes.
Actually, I think I know when we met for the first time. I think it was at the, is it J.R. Moringer? J.R.
Oh,
for
yeah.
the World Book Night.
Yeah, yeah,
Or,
yeah. Really?
yeah.
Did we not already know each other? I don't know. I wonder what year that was. I was looking at Twitter, and we had, like, the Mohsin Hamid event, we were I mean, I found that was, like, the oldest picture of us I found on Twitter, according to the public record, but, I mean, again, I feel like, we saw each other at a million events, like, at the library, at the bookstore. I think I often bought books from you.
Maybe. I
And
know you could have been really super sneaky and like been buying books for me like years
oh,
before I even knew you were an author. Like,
that's yeah, I know, I'm like, you met me then, but I had met you 4 years before.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's ask R2 Ready's question. Have any of your observations changed from publishing this book prior to the 2020 election versus now? So this book came out before the election in 2020 in hardcover, and now it's coming out in paperback. So in case anyone's confused, um, have the pandemic and racial reckoning changed your conception of the alt universe you created?
Um, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's such a fictional world. I mean, it's interesting, like, now that Kamala Harris is vice president, like, something does feel really concretely different from the book is so much about a woman running for office, and it's so much, as I said, like, in dialogue with the events of 2016, even though, I sort of lead up to a different 2016. So I don't know. I mean, I think that every book is kind of like a time capsule. And I don't think that there's anything specific. Like, if you said to me, you could go in and change this. I mean, the actual fact is, this is an interesting. I don't. This is a question for my publisher. I was going to say, if I said, "Can I change this part from, my hardcover to my paperback?" I don't know if they would have said okay or not. But like, it's kind of almost like complicated in terms of, I think, printing issues. But I, I almost think that there might be things that, you know, like 7 years from now, I'll look back and think, oh, maybe I would have done that differently. But as it stands now, I don't know that I would. I mean, there's actually a weird passage that explicitly, like, mentions Joe Biden, or like a character who isn't Hillary, makes like a kind of casual, slightly dismissive comment about Joe Biden, and it's in the context of, after Clarence Thomas's confirmation hearing, where he was the head of the Judiciary Committee. And when I wrote that, I did not know that he would be elected. I didn't know that he would be president. So, it's interesting how different parts of a book can feel like they have different meaning or resonance. Just like there also was, I feel like I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. I want to say that the phrase was like lean in, where I described something, a character like leaning in, or say, and from the time I wrote it to the time of the book's publication, it, like, that phrase took on this, Sheryl Sandberg adjacent meaning that I hadn't intended. So it's almost like when like a person could be born in, like, say 1975 when I was born, and have whatever name, and then, like, a super like, if you're, let's say, I guess a good example of this is, like, if your name was like Alexa, or if your name was Siri, those feel really different than if you were born in 1975 and that was your name, then it's like that. So there is this weird, like, it's an interesting thing to me about language and about stories where like the language can stay the same, the story can stay the same, but the way we perceive it shifts, maybe dramatically. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Or worse, if your name was Google.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, like you could have, like, there could be some, I actually, years ago, I one time went to an acupuncturist who had, I feel like almost like for this person's privacy, I shouldn't say, but he had the exact same name as a celebrity who was younger than he was. And I was like, oh, that must be, you must have such complicated, I didn't ask him about it, but anyway.
Yeah,
Fix my hair. Well,
I also want to share a story, but it's about like someone that is relatively close to me, and it's very unfortunate. Like, and they were actually named after like someone who, and I mean, they killed someone. So it's like, well, now you're named after a murderer. Like,
yeah. I mean, yeah. It is very weird. History, time, it's all very weird. Wait, I see another question in the comments. Should we?
This is actually from my neighbor. So Lynn is asking, is it difficult to write fiction and yet walk the line of not including your opinions of historical events, such as the affair? Should she or shouldn't she have stayed with him?
So that's an interesting question where, I mean, I never try to pretend that I'm anything other than a Democrat. Like, I'm definitely a Democrat. I definitely voted for Hillary. I was, devastated that she did not become president. But again, I think that it's really my fiction writer brain and not my like opinion writer brain or my essayist brain that like wrote this book. And so it's not, I do, I guess, see distinctions in forms of writing. And like I also think weirdly that I write from a point of confusion. And so I'm sort of sorting out, like, it's if I have total clarity on what I think, and I think like this is who Hillary is to the American people, and like this is this is how she should have handled, this decision in the 2016 election, I wouldn't write a novel about it. Like, I mean, maybe I'd write a tweet about it, but it's more like thinking like what just happened, and this some of the ways that we talked about her during the election, like, or during the campaign cycle of 2015 and 2016, like, how did that happen? How did we come to this place? Like, why do we do these things as human beings? I think that actually is a lot of what's motivating me to write. So it's not that I have to suppress my opinions. It's that like I don't even know what my opinions are.
All right. I'm going to ask some non sequitur questions, but before I do that, reminder that the book is available for sale at left-bank.com. Curtis has signed a bunch of book plates, so you can get one of Curtis's signed copies available from Left Bank Books. You can order, actually, we do have some hardcovers available, but we are tonight celebrating the paperback, so the paperback is now available and on our shelves. Signed copies available, and you can order online, over the phone, come into the store, find it on the shelf, and buy it. And thank you. But now I want to ask some fun questions. First off, who is the wildest person that you have gotten to meet as an author? So, like, did you, when Reese selected your book, did you get to meet her ever?
So that's a funny, like the answer to that is sort of weird. I did not meet her because she had selected my book, my story collection for Reese's Book Club, which as you might remember, I filmed a sort of video for her book club in Left Bank. You were lovely and very helpful. I feel like I had like, like I was like a technological mess as we were just, like I think that and then I think like we ate cupcakes or something. That was in 2018. But then I did an event where when she had her book Whiskey in a Teacup, which is sort of, I mean, as you of all people probably know, it's like essays and recipes. And that was in the fall of 2018. I interviewed her on stage in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I did meet her, but again, and it, I mean, and again, it's like she was lovely, very gracious, very smart. We spent, you know, a couple of minutes like off stage. It was the bulk of it. Like it's not like, and then we went to the hotel bar and had drinks. Actually, one of the things that was funny is with one of my sisters came, and then oh, I forgot about this. And then a friend of mine, and afterwards, you know, I don't know if Reese had to like fly out that night or something, but I was kind of standing. It had been outside. I can't, of course, remember the venue, but it was like very big, like maybe a little bigger than the venues where I usually do events. And because, and they're also, they were serving cocktails. And so I think there was a lot of like energy and excitement. And a lot of women had like dressed up and, you know, come with their friend group, and tickets had sold out very rapidly. And so like I go outside to like go back to the hotel, and I do feel like a lot of people almost like came up to me the way you would come up to a celebrity, which happens to me very rarely, but it was like sort of sweet because like my sister and friend were there. It was almost like as if, you know, like I think people asked for my autograph or something, which would like never happen. Like it's almost sweet when like someone, there's a lot about being a writer that's like not glamorous, and it's almost sweet when like other people who know you well get to enjoy the illusion that it is glamorous so that like, you know, you are like famous. Okay, sorry, I feel like these questions I should answer a little more. I can see that we're almost out of time. Okay, next one.
What are you reading? I know this is probably the most difficult question I've asked all evening.
No, wait. Okay, now I have to. Well, let me. I'm trying to. I've been reading some very weird nonfiction. I'm not sure.
Ooh.
I'm trying to think of like if I should. There's. I'm almost not sure. Do you know the book Fulfillment by Alec McGillis?
Oh yeah.
It's sort of like it's reminiscent. So it's nonfiction, and it's a partly. I mean, do we say the word out loud? It's
that evil giant
it's
corporation.
about a very, very big corporation, and what it's like for the people who work for that company, and how cities have been affected by it, and just sort of also about like the economy in general. And yeah, and it feels very like it kind of reminds me of the book Random Family by Adrienne Nicole LeBlanc, which I read, you know, more than 10 years ago, but just it's very sort of meticulously reported and like goes into great detail about like people who work in fulfillment centers, or AKA warehouses.
We actually did an event with Alec for that book.
Yeah.
It was really great.
Super smart. Yeah, he seems. I've not a writer I know personally, but he seems very smart.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Shane, will you pay?
Oh, wait. Have I ever created a cocktail for your books? I've created a few cocktails. So I created a couple for Anthony John, who also used to live in St. Louis.
Oh yeah, where does he live now?
He lives in Massachusetts.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
He's lovely.
He's so lovely. And of course writes kids' books, so what better thing to do than create alcoholic drinks for a kids' book event? I need to create a drink for you. Ooh.
Next time, maybe I need to earn it if I write another book.
Oh, that was going to be my last question. Are you like, when should we be expecting like another book?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I have been writing something, and then I just started to think, should I write something? I feel I'm in a moment of confusion, but I've gotten like pretty far into another novel. And then, yeah, I feel like I need to like get a little distance from it. So this is a very unsatisfying answer, but yes, I'm always writing fiction. I mean, I definitely, you know, like I will, but before long, I'll write another novel. I mean, we're probably like a year or two out from publication. More.
Okay.
closer to 2. But yeah, it won't be like I've written some short stories too. I had a story in of all places in the Financial Times. I think it was maybe like on Christmas Eve or Christmas. I know, and it was actually I was like, oh, I'll never write, pandemic fiction. And then, then apparently by never, I meant like for 6 months or something. And then I wrote a sort of pandemic flavored short story, if that entices anybody. Oh, okay. I see. Do you see the recipe is on Paris Mule? Thank you, Shane.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's been an hour, so like maybe I should go make another drink when we do hour 2. Like
well, hopefully next time we'll get to do this in person.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's super fun to see your face and talk to you. Please give my regards to everyone at the store, and I hope I can come shop there very soon. Oh, but by the way, since I gave a nonfiction recommendation, I'll give a because I feel like I just have this memory of like ordering this book from Left Bank for a friend in St. Louis. The book Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. Have you read that?
I have not yet, but I've heard amazing things.
It's so interesting. I actually was recently, I was emailing with someone and I was like, I said, I mean, I don't think this is the primary reason to read it, but I was like, I felt like it made me understand heterosexuality, like, or like see it as a system that I've almost been too mired in to see as a system. But it's very, I mean, I don't know. It's just like a great, like, the character development is great. The dialogue is great. It's just like super interesting, and it's a debut novel, so I highly recommend it.
Since it is Pride Month, and since you recommended a queer book, I will recommend One Last Stop by Cassie McQuiston. She wrote, or they, I think they, oh, I really should remember this all the time. We'll say they wrote Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is beautiful and phenomenal and amazing, and will make you like heart swell and cry and like all sort of leave up. But the new book, One Last Stop, is a like wildly more like diverse and really like there's maybe time travel involved. Like it's very creative, it's very inventive, and is just like heart swelling with like what's gonna happen. Like
that's the best kind of book. I feel like did it just come out?
End of May, I think.
Yeah, what is time?
I know.
Sounds awesome.
It actually came out like 3 years ago, and I'm just like, no. Like,
well, I mean, if something came out in the last 15 months, who knows? Well, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone following along at home. Yeah, this was lovely. Thank you so much, Shane.
Thank you. And audience, check out our event schedule. We have a lot of incredible things planned for the rest of June, and I'm filling up the calendar for July, and maybe we'll return to some in-person events. So you should get your fill of virtual events this summer while you can. But who knows? Maybe we'll never go back to in-person. I don't know. Anyway, have a great evening. Curtis, thank you, and we will see you again soon.